Be honest with me, pals. How many of you have played a game in a series out of order? For example, you played Final Fantasy VII before playing the first 6, or maybe Resident Evil 4 before playing the 3 that came before it. I'd wager a fair share of you have, and listen, there is no shame in it. We've all done it, and for some games it doesn't even matter, like the aforementioned Final Fantasy series. I did it with Silent Hill. You see, when I was but a wee young child, I was scared all the time. And when I say scared, I mean mind-bogglingly terrified. Looking back on it now, it's pretty comical, but at the time it was a nightmare for me, and it must have been hell for my family. I mean, I got frightened by the silliest things. For examples, there was a horror level in Gex, the Enter the Gecko, I believe it was. The horror level in Conker's Bad Fur Day, Monster Bash, Duke Nukem 3D, Doom, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which terrified me beyond belief, and the sheer atmosphere of Super Metroid. And that is just in the world of games. There are so many other examples in media that creeped the heck out of me. Like, I remember there was a toothpaste commercial with a bunch of, like, puppet monsters. Like, there was a puppet Frankenstein and a puppet Dracula. It was just, I was terrified of, like, the dumbest things. But if I was to sit here and give you all the examples, we'd be here forever. So just believe me when I say I didn't go anywhere remotely close to games like Silent Hill or Resident Evil. However, that isn't exactly true, because I did play the demos of them, and that was enough to scare me for like an entire week straight. So yes, I did miss out on Silent Hill and Resident Evil 1 when they came out. So yeah, and I wouldn't get around to them for many, many more years to come. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I eventually grew a spine and became enamored with the world of horror. But how did it all happen, you might be wondering? Well, if you can believe it, it was all because of the cover for Resident Evil Outbreak. I will never forget. I was standing in the video game rental store, the local one that I always talk about, and I was just staring in awe of this cover right here. Something about its simplistic design just lured me in like a moth to a flame. It was so beautiful to me, and each time I went to the store, I just see this cover taunting me. It was almost poetic in a strange sort of way. Something dark and terrifying, luring in a victim who just wants to uncover the secrets lurking within the darkness. I eventually summoned every single ounce of courage I could muster, and I took that game home, and I played it, and I was absolutely hooked on the thrill that horror games brought. But how does this event tie into Silent Hill? Well, you see that there was another game there sitting on the shelf that had an equally attractive cover. Silent Hill 4: The Room. This cover right here, oh man, it had me hooked. There was just something about this cover with the locked door and the chains. It just, I don't know, it just sucked me right in and just wouldn't let go. In fact, I used to have a poster of this and the Resident Evil Outbreak cover, but sadly they got ruined in a cyclone or hurricane, depending on where you're from. That was the second horror game I rented, and from that moment on, I was absolutely in love with Silent Hill. So much so that I'd go to eBay. Do people use eBay anymore? I think I've asked that question before. It doesn't matter. I'd go onto eBay and I'd track down the other Silent Hill games, and I'd first find Silent Hill 3, I'd buy that and I'd play it, and then I'd search out for Silent Hill 2 and I'd repeat the process. I was absolutely addicted. However, there was one game that eluded me, and that was the very first game in the series. Eventually, after a few more years of searching, I'd end up buying the digital copy of the game on the PS3. And I can't lie when I was saying that I really wasn't expecting too much out of the game at this point. You know, I genuinely thought it was too old and maybe too janky for, you know, to move me in any meaningful way. But I am happy to report it wasn't the case. Silent Hill is remembered for a damn good reason. You know, I actually did want to cover the Silent Hill series last year, but because I didn't plan ahead, I kind of missed my chance, and I panicked, and I just covered Dredge and Deadly Premonition instead. And those were both good games, and I do recommend them, but they weren't Silent Hill. And that was the thing I really, really wanted to talk about. So this year, I was absolutely determined to cover at least Silent Hill 1 through 4. However, as you may be able to tell, those plans fell through, so I quickly changed tactics and put it down to a vote asking all of you which you would like me to cover, the first Resident Evil or the first Silent Hill game. And a lot of you voted, and a lot of you wanted to see Silent Hill, so here we are. But how does Silent Hill hold up these days? Does it still give the same thrills and chills it did back upon its original release? And more importantly, should you play it? Well, to answer those questions and more, we need to take a closer look at Team Silent and Konami's 1999 PlayStation 1 horror classic, Silent Hill. And before we get started, there are 3 important things I need to mention. First, the spoilers. I'm going to be spoiling the entire main story, so you know, as per usual, you've been warned. The second thing is, this game is running through an emulator, and it's styled to look like it's running on a CRT. So if you don't like its look, or you don't like the fact that it's being emulated, well, deal with it. Sorry, it is what it is. And the third thing is that Silent Hill is a horror game, and as such, it has a lot of disturbing moments, especially for younger viewers. So if you are a parent or you are a younger viewer, please keep that in mind before going forward, because I will not be shying away from the graphic content, unless YouTube comes down on me like a like a brick or something, I don't know. Anyway, let's get started. Harry Mason and his daughter Cheryl are off for a vacation to the cozy little town of Silent Hill. They haven't arrived as of yet, but should be there very shortly. However, on their drive, things seem off. At first, a police officer passes them on the road, which in of itself isn't strange, but what is strange is Harry passes the officer's motorbike crashed on the side of the road, and then it happens. A young girl appears on the road, Harry swerves his Jeep, and then darkness. Harry awakens after an unknown amount of time. He turns to check on his daughter after the crash, but she's missing. In a panic, Harry steps out of the car and begins his search in the nearby town of Silent Hill. As Harry stands in the dense, fog-covered streets, he notices something odd. Nobody's around. He's all alone. Snow falls, and Harry continues walking through the streets until he spots his daughter, who strangely takes off running. Harry, wasting no time, follows after her until she enters into an alleyway. Its winding passages twists and turns as he runs, and sirens ring out in the distance as a strange darkness begins to fall as the snow turns to rain. Harry lights a match and continues further into the near-pitch black alleyway. In the darkness, he finds strange things like a wheelchair and a blood-covered hospital bed, but at the end, we find the most horrifying thing: a body strung to a fence. Harry doesn't have time to process anything before small grey monsters with knives approach him. They attack, and Harry is forced to flee for his life, but eventually the monsters follow him and take him down. Harry awakens in a panic in a small diner. He hears footsteps and looks to find the same police officer who passed him on the road earlier that night. The officer introduces herself as Sybil Bennett, an officer from the next town over of Brahms. Harry asks her if she's seen his daughter, but she hasn't. But He also asks if she knows of what might be going on around here, but again, she has no idea. The only thing she does know is that each and every single road leading out of town is gone. Like, it's just a total hole in the ground. This town is completely cut off from the outside world. Whatever is going on here is troublesome. Enough so that when Harry goes to leave in search of his daughter, Sybil gives him a gun. After that, Sybil leaves, and Harry is on his own in this diner. When he turns to leave, he notices a strange sound emanating from a radio nearby. Harry walks over to investigate this strange radio that's emanating a weird static. When he picks it up, wham! A weird monster flies in through the cafe's window, and Harry is forced to shoot it and kill it. What is this? This is the second monster he has found in this town. It makes no logical sense. With a clear and present danger now lurking in this town, Harry leaves in search of his daughter. With no real clues to go on, Harry decides to return to the alleyway where things got a little crazy. On his way there, Harry encounters more monsters lurking around the dense fog-covered streets. Some of them, like the ones we encountered earlier, like to fly around and swoop in for the kill, and as we all know, swooping is bad. And others are more dog-like monsters who lunge forward and go straight for the throat. These monsters, however, are no match for Harry and his new 9mm hand cannon. So, thanks Sybil, thank you for that, that's very handy. In the alleyways from earlier, thankfully this time things don't get all dark, wet and strange, but they stay the same, which is good. Sadly, Harry doesn't find Cheryl, but he does find her sketchbook, which contains the most straightforward directions I have ever seen in a game. To school. Awfully nice of Cheryl to leave this here for us, so thank you, Cheryl. Well, with our path forward now clear, Harry checks his map on the town to find the school, and when he does, he begins his short-ish trek over there, and after taking a shortcut through somebody's house, the world changes once again, becoming darker, almost as if night has fallen. This doesn't deter our hero. In fact, it makes him quicken his pace somewhat until he eventually reaches the school and heads inside. The school is silent and dark. A place that should be filled with laughter, learning, and good times is now just vacant and hollow. Harry walks through its empty hallways, searching for any clues that might lead him to Cheryl. What he finds instead are more monsters. The same monsters he encountered when he first arrived here. Sadly, they're no less hostile to his presence now. As he progresses, he finds mentions of a girl who used to attend this school, Alessa. It would seem that she was rather unliked by the other students, and they'd go as far as bullying her and carving up her desk, telling her to go home and do things to herself that might harm her, if you catch my meaning. As sad as this news is, this isn't the reason we're here. We're here to look for Cheryl, and after solving a few puzzles here and there, we make our way further into the school via a strange passage. Once out on the other side, Harry finds himself in the exact same place he entered from. Only something is very, very wrong. The school has become a twisted nightmare version of itself. Outside of the strange demonic symbol on the ground, which in of itself is creepy, the walls have degraded, and the floor has turned into wire mesh, and the metal on it has aged and rusted, and everything is disgusting. Harry has no idea what's going on, but he knows what's at stake. So he pushes down any fear he has and continues forward. This new twisted school's halls are very confusing, and the monsters seem larger in number and more aggressive. But after wandering around some more, Harry makes it into the depths of the school, the boiler room. And once inside, he finds a hung body which engulfs in flame, and a giant dog-like beast attacks him. Harry runs around shooting it with his handgun, however, its face seems protected somehow. That is, until it stops and opens its maw, and Harry just whips out his newfound shotgun and fills that hellhound full of lead. But when the beast falls, air raid sirens cry out, and they seem as though they're coming from inside his head, and the pain in his head rises and the world begins to spin around him as darkness eventually takes over Harry and he falls to the ground. When he awakens, Harry notices a young girl in a school uniform watching him. However, when the girl realizes she's been spotted, she quickly vanishes into thin air, leaving Harry extremely confused. Was she watching over him? Was she even really there? No. It must just be like a trick of the mind due to all the stress. Regardless, it seems as though we're out of that nightmare world and back in the, for lack of a better term, normal world. Harry makes his way out of the now normal boiler room and back up and into the school. He didn't find his daughter, but when all hope seems lost, church bells begin tolling in the distance. Harry pulls out his map and finds the church, and with no clues to go on, decides to make his way over there. After all, somebody must be ringing that bell. It's a short-ish jog over to the church, and it's more or less easy enough to find because of the, bell tolling. Inside the church, Harry encounters a strange older woman, and the word strange is key here. This woman appears, well, a little out of her mind. Or is she? I mean, we've seen some pretty strange stuff around here lately, so who are we to judge? Regardless, she tells Harry that his arrival was foretold, and that she knows what he's searching for. This takes Harry by complete surprise, but before he can get any ounces before he can get any ounces out of this woman, what is she, some sort of drug dealer?
Your arrival was foretold, Harry. Yes.
Yes, I was told to find a woman here in the church, and she would provide me with a few ounces of the drug known as daughter.
Yes, here you go. You're a drug addict now, Harry.
What the hell am I doing? Well, I'm losing my mind here. Anyway, let's try this again, shall we? This takes Harry by complete surprise, but before he can get any answers out of the woman, she just continues to ramble, telling him that he'll need this strange-looking object called a flauros, which I'm pretty sure I butchered the name of, to break through the walls of darkness, which she then places on the altar of the church. The woman also tells Harry that he needs to head over to the hospital, and after that she just pieces out. Harry approaches the altar and takes the flauros object, and does what the woman suggested, and heads to the hospital. On the way over to the hospital, Harry stops off at the local police station in hopes of finding something useful, and also to catch his breath. Sadly, he doesn't really find much of use, but what he does find is that apparently Silent Hill seemed to have a bit of a drug problem. No, this isn't continuing the joke from earlier. This is actually real and in the game. It appears that the officers were beginning to suspect that drugs were being manufactured here, and they were being created using a local flower known as White Claudia. Now, is any of this important? No, not really, especially considering the circumstances Harry finds himself in, but still, I guess I'm just curious what the police are up to when they aren't so damn busy arresting me for being so gosh darn sexy.
I'm too sexy for my shirt.
After the quick rest, Harry runs out of the police station, down the street and right past the hospital before realizing he took a wrong turn. And then after that, he makes his way to the hospital and wow, jeez, that scared the hell out of me. After dealing with those hellish beasts from hell, Harry actually goes inside the hospital. Inside the hospital, it's just as empty as the rest of the town is. Or is it? Well, no, actually. Shortly after entering the hospital and going into a room, Harry comes across a man who shoots at him. Thankfully, he misses, even though he is like standing so close to his face that he can lick it. This guy with the big iron on his hip is Dr. Kaufmann, who works here at the hospital, and he is rather relieved to see another human, which I gathered the moment I walked in through the room and he tried to blow a hole in my face. So, yeah, you know, that's usually a good sign. Anyway, Kaufmann here tells Harry that he's just as confused as, you know, he is regarding this whole situation, so we're not going to get any answers out of him, which is reinforced by the fact that he just gets up and leaves right after that. So overall, not much help, but at least we've met another living person in this town. So yeah, once we're on our own, we get to exploring the hospital a little bit, and we find some sort of strange red liquid in a broken vial within Kaufmann's office. It seems a little strange to Harry that the vial was smashed, and it seems like it was smashed on purpose rather than an accident, so he takes some of it. I mean, why not? I usually take unknown liquids on the ground, you know, all the time. I do it all the time. Everybody's got to have a hobby, right? You know, some people collect retro video games, some people collect buttons, some people collect the toenail clippings of someone that they have the hots for. Me, I collect unknown liquid that I find anywhere and everywhere, you know? It's just, we've all got our hobbies, okay? So, you know, get off my back. Yeah? Cool? Okay, great, wonderful. Moving on. Further into the hospital, as Harry enters into an elevator and takes it to the 4th floor, the world begins to change once again after spotting the strange girl from earlier. The hospital has now transformed into a dark, oppressive, disgustingly twisted version of itself, and the monsters come out in full force in the form of monstrous nurses and doctors. Things are becoming serious once again. I should also point out that from this point forward, the shaders I was using for the game broke, and I had to change them, so if you notice a difference in the image quality, that's why. Harry spends a long time running through the hospital, fighting enemies and solving puzzles, but what after feels like about an hour, he eventually makes his way into the basement, which in of itself is a maze. But upon entering into a random room, he finds a slightly blood-stained bed, which appears to have been used somewhat recently. Next to the bed is a key and a photo. A photo of a young woman named Alessa. This looks like the girl that we've been seeing around lately, and she also shares the same name as the girl who was bullied in school. Strange. What does she have to do with any of this? With the key now in hand, Harry makes his way back up through the hospital and eventually finds a locked door, which he promptly unlocks. Inside the room is a nurse who immediately just hugs Harry. She introduces herself as Lisa Garland. She seems just as confused as everybody else is around here, and is just happy to see another person, and thankfully she didn't try to shoot us, although it would have been kind of weird if Kaufmann just immediately hugged us. So, hey, you know, whatever. Harry asks Lisa if she's seen his daughter, but of course she hasn't. She's been in this room the entire time. Harry then asks if she knows anything about the odd room he found in the basement, and Lisa explains that she and the other hospital staff actually aren't allowed in the basement, but still asks what he found down there. But as Harry begins to explain, the world spins and Harry's head begins to scream with pain as air raid sirens sound out, and then darkness. Harry wakes up in the normal world, confused if everything he had just experienced was maybe a dream. And then the strange old woman from earlier enters the room telling him that he was too late. This time, the woman introduces herself to Harry as Dahlia Gillespie. Harry wastes no time in demanding answers on what is going on. However, Dahlia still isn't much help as she continues to just ramble and rant. Nothing she says is making sense. But what we do learn is that this town is being swallowed by darkness, and that strange occult symbol we'd seen earlier was the Mark of Samael. She also tells Harry to head to the second church in town and gives him a key before peacing out. Now, upon closer inspection, the key itself isn't actually marked for a church, but for an antique shop, which is odd, but when Harry looks at his map, he spots the antique store in town and decides to head over there, so that's exactly what he does. The jog over to the antique store isn't as long as you might be thinking. Harry, thankfully, has plenty of stamina, so in short order he arrives at the store, unlocks the door, and heads inside. And what he finds is, well, nothing much. Just a small store, but something does catch his eye. A wardrobe. He notices strange marks on the floor near it and something on the wall, so he pushes it out of the way and finds a hole. Just then, somebody enters the store. Harry whips around with his gun and finds Sybil. A friendly face, thank God. Sybil tells Harry that she tried to leave town again, but found that nothing's working. No phones or cars or anything. She just couldn't find a way out. That's when she spotted Harry and decided to follow after him. Harry asks her if she's seen his daughter in her travels, and surprisingly she did. Well, she saw a young girl anyway, and when she chased after her, she had to stop because she vanished into the fog. And the road was gone, almost like she was walking on thin air. Still, Sybil lets Harry know that she was headed towards the lake. Harry also brings up meeting Dahlia and how crazy she seems. Sybil assumes that it's related to drugs, since apparently they were being sold to tourists here in the town, so, you know, that surprisingly lines up with what we learned over at the police station, so that's something. Another thing Harry brings up is the other world, and how he keeps seeing it along with the sirens and the monsters, but Sybil has no idea what he's talking about. After that, Harry investigates the hole in the wall while Sybil covers him from the outside. Inside, Harry finds a small room with an altar and assumes that this must be the church Dahlia talked about. But other than that, he doesn't really find anything of interest, so he turns to leave, but when he does, the altar bursts into flames. And then Sybil tries to go and check on Harry, only to find him missing and nothing on fire. Harry awakens in the hospital with Lisa watching over him. Harry doesn't seem to question anything about what just happened, but rather asks Lisa if she knows anything about Dahlia, and it turns out she does know her. The whole town knows her. It seems that her crazy demeanor is because her daughter died in some sort of fire, and after that event, she was never the same, so the town just sort of lets her be the way she is. Harry also asks Lisa if she might know the meaning behind the words Dahlia told him, that the town is being swallowed by darkness, and again, it turns out that she does know what that might mean. She explains to him that before the whole town was some sort of tourist resort, the townsfolk were into some strange occult stuff, black magic and so on. And as the newer people moved into town, the older folks kind of kept that history to themselves. Lisa also adds that the founding members of Silent Hill died recently under strange circumstances, and the people blamed it on some sort of curse that the town is suffering from. You know, you gotta blame the event on something, right? That's usually how it goes. After that, Harry wakes up in the Twisted Nightmare version world of the antique store, now sporting a nice mark of Samael. Neat. Harry begins to question his own sanity. Is this some sort of dream, or is it real? Did he fall into some sort of coma after the accident and is just now in hospital? He isn't sure, but what he is sure about is finding his daughter, and thanks to Sybil, he knows that she's probably headed towards the lake. But the road is gone, so he decides to return to the hospital and speak to Lisa. I don't know why he didn't just ask her before, but anyway, it's off to the hospital. Only that's easier said than done because the nightmare has actually spread into the town itself and not localized in one area. The darkness is all-consuming, and the monsters have just tripled in number and have gone frenzied. So Harry runs as fast as he can to avoid them, but has no real idea which way to go since the whole world is now twisted and strange. Still, after a lot of running around, he does eventually find his way to the hospital and to Lisa once again. And Lisa is happy to see Harry. She was just scared on her own, and personally, I don't understand what she's talking about. I never get scared. To the hospital, and wow, jeez, that scared the hell out of me. Okay. One time, no, let's just move on, we're moving on. Harry asks Lisa if she knows how to get to the lake, and thankfully, she does. Via the sewers, so yippee, I guess. Oh, sewers. Anyway, Harry thanks her for the info and turns to leave, but Lisa begs him not to go. She's too scared on her own, and so Harry offers to take her with him. For a moment, I felt true fear, a terror so extreme that it cannot be put into words. I thought I was going to need to escort Lisa with me and go through the sewers and so on and so forth, but thankfully, all my fears were laid to rest when Lisa declined, explaining that she feels like she can't really leave this place and has to stay. And with that, Harry turns and leaves. Whew, I dodged a bullet. There will be no escort questing. Thank goodness. Thankfully, the world, after all of this, is back to normal. I say normal, but as normal as it can be anyways. This makes traveling across town to the sewers so much easier and safer. And after busting the locked gate, Harry enters into the sewers. And the sewers are dark, dank, smelly, and they're just as warm and inviting as you might expect. And that is to say, they're not warm and inviting in the slightest. They're sewers, you know? Cockroach monsters and some weird new hellbat beast thing lurk within the darkness, just waiting to pounce upon Harry. After far too long for my liking, Harry makes it out of the maze-like sewers and up into the now dark town. Well, look on the bright side. At least the town doesn't smell like poop. Or maybe it does. I don't know. I wonder what Silent Hill kind of smells like. Kind of damp, I would imagine. You know, because of the fog. I wonder if anybody's ever answered that question. Like, made like a 4-hour-long video just dissecting the way Silent Hill might smell. Maybe I should do that. Everybody wants to know all the mysteries of Silent Hill, but here I am asking the heavy-hitting questions. Silent Hill, should you smell it? I guess we'll never know. On his hike across the now dark Silent Hill, Harry feels it's best to stop off at the local bar to catch his breath and maybe grab a drink or two. I mean, this is thirsty work after all. This decision, however, leads Harry to do a little side questing. Inside the bar, Harry finds Dr. Kaufmann, who's being attacked by a monster. Harry quickly steps in and saves his life. Kaufmann thanks us by not thanking us at all, which is nice, I guess, and then pieces out, but not before Harry asks him if he knows Alessa, you know, being a doctor and all. His response is a quick, simple no, and then he leaves. Odd. He should know her, being that she was in the hospital he works at, but ah well. Harry turns to leave, but then notices that the good doctor with the great bedside manner left behind some stuff. A key and a receipt to the general store with a code written on it. Harry figures, you know what, let's go over to the general store. I mean, I'm not in any rush or anything. And then he heads over to the general store, and inside the general store is a safe containing some drugs. A white powder, to be specific. So I guess Sybil and the local police were right about the Silent Hill drug problem. But the question is, why on earth did Kaufmann have a receipt and a code for this place? Well, next to the safe is a picture for the local motel, and on that picture is a code for the back room, or the back door to the place. So Harry figures, what the heck, and then heads on over to the motel, because hey, we're not in any rush or anything, am I right? Anyway, once over at the motel, is there a difference between hotel and motel? I'm asking a lot of questions right here. What does Silent Hill smell like? What's the difference between a hotel and a motel? Anyway, once over in the motel, Harry finds that the key Kaufmann left behind actually unlocks one of the room doors, and inside the motel's room, he finds a key for a motorbike. And after a little bit more investigating, Harry finds a note discussing how somebody needs to hold on to the package a little while longer and not to disobey him because he is probably linked to the deaths of the mayor and the others. In another room, Harry finds a motorbike and uses the key on it to unlock the fuel tank and look inside the fuel tank, which is a good thing because inside is a vial of weird red liquid. But before he can do anything, Kaufmann bursts into the room, snatches the vial away, berates Harry, and then leaves in a huffman. Did you? Did you get my joke? No? Okay. I thought it was clever, but clearly I was wrong. So, putting the pieces together, it kinda does assume that Kaufmann might be somehow tied into the drug issue here in Silent Hill, but the hows and the whys of it, we're not gonna figure out. But what is kind of interesting is his reaction to the red liquid, which appears to be the same sort of red liquid that was in his office earlier that was smashed intentionally. Well, something deeper is going on here, but either way, this was probably just a waste of time. Time we could have been spending looking for our daughter. So let's return to that, shall we? Once leaving the motel, Harry makes his way across town and over to the lake, but on his way there, the ground begins to shake, knocking Harry to the ground as sirens blare louder than before in the distance, and the ground begins to change and mold right in front of his eyes. The nightmare world is here, but this time it's different. This time it happened right in front of our very eyes. Harry figures that something very bad is happening and quickens his pace to the lake, doing his best to avoid the crazy amount of bloodthirsty monsters that are now appearing. Eventually, he makes it to the lake and finds Sybil on a boat. She's glad to see Harry, and the two discuss that shift in reality that Sybil can now clearly see. And as they're talking, Dahlia also pops in for a quick chat, just a howdy-do neighbor, I guess. She tells him that the demon is growing in power and spreading its wings and is now hungry, and if we don't stop the demon from returning, darkness will cover the entire sun and everybody will die. She begs Harry to go to the lighthouse and to the center of the amusement park to stop the mark of Samael from being completed, and also to stop his daughter from becoming sacrificed to the demon, so I guess that's a thing now. He's the only person who can stop it. Sybil turns to Harry and tells him that they should probably split up. She'll go to the amusement park while he goes to the lighthouse, and after that, she leaves. But right after she leaves, Dahlia turns to Harry and tells him that the only way to stop the demon is with that Flauros object from earlier, and then Harry correctly points out how Sybil will stop the demon without one, and Dahlia just leaves. So I guess it's off to the lighthouse, because we have a demon to stop. Things around the town are becoming dire as Harry makes his way over to the lighthouse, which is thankfully very close by. And after climbing all the way up to the top, it turns out he's too late, as the mark has already been completed. But he does spot Alessa there, who fades away. With nothing else to do here, Harry decides to make his way all the way down the lighthouse and on over to the amusement park to help Sybil stop the mark there. And just how do we get to the amusement park, you might be asking? More sewers. Yeah, that's right, more sewers. Yippee! You know what? The demon can take the town. I'm not going back into the sewers. Now in the sewers, Harry fights his way through them and fights more of those green bat monster things, as well as some new strange-looking moleman monster thing, who sadly isn't Hans Moleman. Hashtag Hans Moleman is the best Moleman. I love Hans Moleman. Anyway, after a wonderful romp through the smelly sewers, Harry makes it to the amusement park, which, if I could just pause for a moment and complain, it doesn't really live up to its name. There was no amusement to be found here. Like, this is like 1-star amusement park. I mean, yeah, look, the ride looks like fun. Like, this one looks great, but this place could really use a light or two. Maybe some sort of mascot as well, you know, just to welcome me in and make me feel like safe and happy. I'm thinking some sort of like pink bunny, maybe? Yeah, with some sort of like, I don't know, a name, like Johnny or Connie, something like that. I think that a mascot could really work wonders for this place, but well, anyway. Harry searches around the park for Sybil and eventually finds her slacking off on the merry-go-round, only something might be wrong because she pulls her gun and fires at Harry. She's been possessed. Harry thinks quickly and for some reason decides to use the unknown liquid he found in Kaufmann's office on her, and this makes her drop to the ground in pain and puke up some sort of strange slug thing, which Harry then promptly stomps to death. After that, Sybil and Harry have a heart-to-heart, and she asks why anybody would want to harm his daughter, and he explains that he has no clue, but that she actually isn't his real daughter. He and his wife found her as a baby on the side of the road, and since they couldn't have any children of their own, they adopted her and raised her as their own. And sadly, 4 years ago, his wife passed away, and Harry believes that there actually might be some sort of connection between Silent Hill and Cheryl, but what it is, he has no idea. After that, Harry bumps directly into Alessa, who is just hanging out in the darkness, I guess. And no, I didn't skip anything. It literally just cuts to this. Alessa psychically blasts Harry away, and when he gets up and runs towards her again, a force field blocks him, and then that strange Flauros object from earlier glows and floats in the air, and then some sort of light shoots out and hits the girl and she falls to the floor. Then Dahlia appears out of nowhere and walks up to the girl, who then looks up at her and just says, "Mama." Dahlia scolds her daughter for trying to prevent her plans and that she didn't realize how powerful she had become. Dahlia admits that she couldn't stop her on her own, and so she had to trick Harry into stopping her for her. Then Dahlia forcefully grabs her daughter by the wrist, who tries to break free, and then tells her that they can finally complete the ritual now, and the two vanish in a bright light along with Harry. After that, Harry wakes up in the hospital with Lisa watching over him. Lisa tells Harry, I know this is going like a mile a minute, bear with me. Lisa tells Harry that she went down into the basement after they spoke last, and when she was down there, she saw Alessa's room. She knows something happened there, but she can't remember what. After that, Lisa gets up and runs away, leaving Harry on his own. Harry then stops and listens to a strange rumbling sound that he notices is actually coming from the basement, so with no other things to do, he just decides to go there to investigate the rumbling. That is easier said than done, however. The hospital is not normal anymore. It is a completely twisted, broken reality, mixed with other locations that he's previously visited, like the school. The walls are bleeding and fleshy and smell disgusting, and some of the walls have rusted metal, and this place just it just isn't a place. It is just a nightmare, a true nightmare. After doing a few puzzles and killing some monsters, Harry finds Lisa in a room. Lisa tells Harry that she finally understands everything. Why she felt trapped, why she's there to begin with, and she begins to cry and step towards Harry, arms outstretched, begging for him to hold her. Harry freaks out and begins to back away from her, and then eventually pushes her away when she gets too close. She turns to him and looks as her face begins to bleed profusely, and she stumbles towards him, saying nothing, but Harry freaks out and runs out of the room, blocking it as her cries behind the door begin to fade away. After a moment, Harry re-enters the room to find Lisa completely gone, but her diary there. Harry picks it up and begins to read it. In it, she talks about how alone she feels and how she just wants to be free. She also feels awful and that blood pours from her faucets and that the room she's in is also filled with insects, and her final words are that she just needs more drugs. This seems a little confusing at first, but Harry also has a VHS tape that he watches a little later, which might clear some things up for everybody, because I know I was confused. In the tape, Lisa talks about a girl who is severely burned all over, and that she just keeps bleeding and won't stop or won't die. The girl shouldn't be alive, but she just somehow is, and she also makes promises to somebody off camera that she won't tell anybody about the girl. So what's going on here? What happened with Lisa? Well, I'm just going to quickly explain it because I did a terrible job of explaining it. First and foremost, it was terrible, but I was also confused when I first played this, so I'm just going to quickly cover it really quick. Lisa was never actually alive. From the moment we met her, she was dead. And she had lost all her memories, she didn't understand what was going on. And once she went down into the basement and saw the room for herself, all her memories flooded back to her. She realized she was never actually alive to begin with, that she had died, and she just started to bleed and fade away into Silent Hill itself. So that's why she disappeared, that's why she started bleeding. she was never alive. She was dead. So that must have been absolutely terrifying for somebody to realize. I mean, could you just imagine waking up one day and then realizing that the past year of your life or whatever was non-existent, that you had actually died a year previous and that you were dead this entire time? That would be terrifying. I couldn't even begin to imagine. But anyway, moving on. Further into the hospital-like maze that Harry finds himself in, he enters into Alessa's hospital room and sees some sort of projection of past events. He witnesses Dr. Kaufmann, Dahlia, and 2 other hospital staff standing over Alessa's bed as she's laying in it, burned head to toe and in great pain. They explain that their plans have been stalled because Alessa has somehow split her soul into 2, and that she's unable to now give birth to their god and gain great power from it. To continue their plans, they're going to need to reunite the 2 souls and bring them back together as one. In order to do that, they're going to keep Alessa alive, and thanks to the amount of pain she's suffering because she's burned from head to toe, the other half of her soul, aka Cheryl, will feel the pain and be drawn back to the original body, aka Silent Hill. Once that's happened, they can resume their ritual and make Alessa give birth and claim their new power. Until then, Kaufmann will blackmail and use Lisa's drug addiction to care for the girl in secret within the hospital's basement. As long as Lisa does what they want, Kaufmann will keep supplying her with all the drugs she can handle. Anyway, even deeper within this crazy place, Harry comes across another projection of the past, and what appears to be taking place in somebody's house. Harry sees a very young Alessa and her mother Dahlia, and Dahlia tells her daughter to just do what she wants and lend her some of her power, because I guess Alessa actually has some sort of psychic powers. But Alessa refuses and just tells her mother that she wants to be happy and spend time with her mother and just be normal. But Dahlia misunderstands her daughter's pleas for help and assumes that she's telling her mother to just take her power all for herself and do the ritual without spreading it to amongst the cult. And that's an idea she likes, and so she prepares to do the ritual on her own, and that leads to a fire breaking out within the house, burning it to the ground and burning Alessa alive, but not killing her. To cover up their tracks, Kaufmann faked her death with another body, and the cult hide Alessa in the hospital. After this, Harry makes his way downstairs in the house to find Alessa, Dahlia, and Sybil. Sybil tries to stop Dahlia by just shooting her, but gets blasted back with telekinesis. Harry then steps forward and demands his daughter back from Dahlia, who just shrugs and laughs and points to Alessa and tells him that that is his daughter, that the 2 spirits became one the moment they entered into Silent Hill. His daughter Cheryl is gone. Only Alessa remains. Still confused, and me as well, Harry also asks what's going on, and Dahlia explains to him that Alessa had split her soul into 2 in an effort to stop her mother and the cult, and it had worked. And that was until Harry and Cheryl came to town. Alessa caused the crash in an effort to stop Harry, but it was already too late. The 2 had become one. However, this turn of events meant that Alessa had actually become more powerful, and in doing so with her new powers, transformed Silent Hill in an effort to stop the cult and stop the demon's power from growing, aka that nightmare world. And she'd actually almost won, but thanks to Dahlia tricking Harry, he broke Alessa's power over Silent Hill and let the demon roam free, and Dahlia was able to take her away and finally finish the ritual they started all those years ago, and now Alessa is about to give birth to God and bring forth paradise. Just then, Alessa begins to glow and transform into a beautiful divine being. However, Kaufmann appears just out of nowhere, shoots Dahlia, and berates her for screwing him over and cutting him out of her plans, and that this was not what they had agreed on, and demands she return everything back to normal. And then he pulls out that same vial of unknown liquid we found that he took from us, and horrified Dahlia screams out, a Glophoclis, oh lord. Dahlia, please just say the word for me, please. So I guess this is a special liquid, and Kaufmann laughs and throws the vial at the being, which just smashes on it, and then it screams and transforms into its actual true form as Dahlia laughs maniacally. The demon flies into the air and calls down red lightning onto Dahlia, which sets her ablaze and kills her instantly. And then the demon turns its attention to Harry. Oh, and Kaufmann runs away, by the way, like a coward. Harry then does his best to avoid all the monster's attacks and stops every now and again to unload his shotgun at the beast. However, this thing is strong, and it easily holds its own against him. Harry, thankfully, is no slouch, and he has gone through hell and back again, and nothing is going to stop him. So he continues to run around, shooting the demon at every opportunity he gets, until eventually the demon drops to the ground and vanishes in a bright light, leaving Alessa behind as fire begins to rain down upon everything. Harry stands in front of Alessa as she hands him a baby. Harry bends down, picks up the baby, and Alessa points for him to run. Harry looks at the baby, then holds it tight as both he and Sybil make for the exit as fire rains down. Kaufmann too tries to flee, but he's grabbed by Lisa, who drags him kicking and screaming down into whatever hellish nightmare awaits the two of them. As Sybil and Harry run closer to the exit, they know that they're not going to make it. But just then, a bright light flashes, holding all the fire in place. Alessa is using the very last of her strength to buy enough time for the two to escape and flee Silent Hill. The two of them eventually do manage to escape the town as dawn begins to rise. The end. So straight off the bat, I'm going to apologize to you. I did a terrible job at recounting this story. A lot happens right at the end, and it's just like word vomit. Just sort of like, and this, and this, and this, and this. Yeah, so I apologize. I did a terrible job at telling the story, but I hope you were able to follow along. Because even if you were confused, you're not alone. I'll never forget finishing this game for the first time and actually being rather lost on the plot. Small key details are highly missable, and without those small context clues along the way, you might be a little confused on the story. In fact, I actually found out while making this video that an entire document is actually removed from the NTSC version of this game, or it's bugged, or sometimes it appears and sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes it has a trigger but nobody knows what it is. Anyway, the document in question is actually talks about the fire, and that Alessa's body was found during it, and that she died, and it all happens on the same day that Harry and his wife found Cheryl. So yeah, it's just, I don't know why that document's bugged out, but sometimes it is, and it doesn't matter. It's not to say that even without all those context clues that you'll be lost entirely on the plot and you just will have no idea. You can understand the plot. It's just that I personally felt that things were missing when I played it, and I was right. Still, the story itself is rather interesting, and the ideas behind it are really solid. A worried father searching for his lost child, an evil cult, a haunted town, and a mystery just waiting to be uncovered as our hero's skills are put to the test. How far will a person go to save somebody they love, you know? It's great stuff, solid stuff, perfect, chef's kiss. What I will also add is that nothing is really given away to you. You learn just enough about the town, the cult, the demon, and all the people to satisfy your needs. And what I mean by that is the mystery still stays a mystery. How many times have you been sucked into a world and it's beautiful and everything and you're questioning things, and then the evil villain gives away the entire backstory that he has and his motivations and the reasonings, and all the things that were once a mystery are just fully explained, and those, the explanation is just not satisfying because your imagination just was so much better than what the game was giving you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That it just sometimes that when it happens in a game, I am just sucked right out of the world. Silent Hill 1 isn't like that. Like I said, you get just enough to follow along, provided you are picking up notes along the way. But even with all those details uncovered, you're still left asking questions. I love it when a game does that. It raises questions, even things that you might not be thinking of, kind of like what's going on with the regular people. You know what I mean? Like, are they still just milling about in their regular reality? And so, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like when a game sort of raises little questions or makes you use your imagination to think a little bit more, I think that is a mark of great storytelling. So Silent Hill, I do believe it really does shine in that aspect. Now, that aside, something I'm going to bring up is that when I first played this game, I'm pretty sure I either got the standard good ending or the bad one. And yes, you heard me correctly, this story doesn't actually end the way I told you. There are 4 possible endings to this game, and I, for this story, got the good plus ending. The endings from best to worst are good plus, good, bad, and bad plus. Each ending has a different outcome based upon certain actions you did or didn't take, and the best ending is highly missable. But it's also the ending that I feel gives the most complete story, at least in my own humble opinion. Now, I'm not going to spoil each ending, so don't worry if you decide to play Silent Hill for yourself. I'm not going to spoil all the endings or how to really get them, even though I kind of sort of already did. But anyway, now I probably should have brought this up earlier, but I just now remembered, and I'm just going to interject this right here. I want to make something perfectly clear. The way I make these videos is I try to pretend that the game I'm covering is the absolute newest release of its respective franchise. And I bring this up because some of my thoughts or information might be tainted by future releases of Silent Hill. For example, I always thought that the good plus ending was the canonical ending of this game, but a future release kind of throws that whole thing into question. You see, in my ending, and again, this is going to be a heavy spoiler, so if you skipped the story, then please skip this part 2 to the timestamp on screen. So I'll just give you 3, 2, 1. Okay, so in my ending, Sybil and Harry escape Silent Hill together. And if the game had just ended right there and we never got any more Silent Hill games, I would assume that they'd go off and live a happy life either together or maybe not, but a happy life more or less. However, that is if you saved Sybil. It is extremely possible for Sybil to die, and by your hand. And in Silent Hill Homecoming, which is the 5th game in the mainline series, it implies that Sybil is dead. And one of the characters you meet tells the main character of that game, who I genuinely can't remember his name. Somebody tells the main character that she, Sybil, went to the town, but was just never seen again. Like, she just vanished off the face of the earth after that. So, yeah, anyway. Again, this is all to say that if you're one of the Silent Hill lore professors out there and you're just noticing inaccuracies left and right, please try to forgive me and try to look at this whole video from the perspective of just Silent Hill 1. Nothing else came before it, nothing else came after it. That's how I try to approach these videos. So I don't know why I brought this up now, but yeah, anyway. Now, earlier I did say that there were 4 endings, and I actually lied to you. You see, if you beat this game and you play it again, you can play it in New Game Plus, or New Fear Mode as they call it. This will let you earn new weapons and force you into higher difficulty modes, which is really an actually interesting feature, I think. Like, for example, if you played it on easy mode, then when you come back around to the game and try New Plus mode, you can't ever play it in easy mode again. You must play it in normal mode or hard mode, and then you beat it again, and yeah. I think that's very interesting, and I honestly wish more games would do that. But anyway, other than that, you also get an extra ending, the UFO ending. And that particular ending, it's just a joke. It's just a joke ending for fun. Still, I figured I'd bring it up just in case. Aside from all the different endings and what they imply, does the story hold up on its own? Is it still good in 2024 if you were to play it? Yeah, I do believe so. You're always wondering what's going on and waiting for all the puzzle pieces to fall into place, and when they do, it's all satisfying. Another wonderful thing is that it's not exactly story related, but more lore related, which in turn adds to the story itself. It's the lore, and more specifically, the lore for places within the town and the enemies you'll encounter along the way. Each of those places and each of those monsters aren't just creepy places or monsters for the sake of horror. Each one has its own meaning. They in some way tie to Alessa and her life before the events of the game. For example, the boss you encounter in the school is based upon a book she read and sounds she would hear from the boiler room while in school, and those things that her imagination conjured up actually manifest itself into the first boss. And I think that design choice is fantastic, to say the least. I love it when a game developer go the extra mile and ask themselves, well, yeah, okay, this is good, but how does it fit into the story? How does it fit into the game? How does it tie into the characters? Should it actually be here? And if it is, why? I love that. I truly, truly love that. Like, sometimes I will play a game and you'll be wandering around a road and the road just kind of like ends. And when you zoom out and think of it from a broad perspective, you're like, nobody would ever build this road. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But it's just there for the sake of the game. It's just, I don't know, I love it when things actually do make sense. But anyway, that's all I have to say about the story. The only negative thing I can think of that might pose as an issue for some people is the actual length of this story itself. Not the game, the story itself. My total playtime for the entire thing was 4 hours, 52 minutes, and 11 seconds. Now, it says here that I didn't die, but that is a lie. I died once during the final boss fight, and then rather than wait for the reload and so on and so forth, I just wanted to jump back into the action, so I loaded a save state, which I was keeping as a backup when I saved the game. So every time I saved the game, I made a save state. I just did it as a backup. Don't worry, I didn't abuse it or anything like that. I just loaded the save state. So I did die one time. But anyway, that is my total playtime. And a lot of that was just running around from place to place or solving puzzles. If you trimmed that out, you could probably beat this game in like 2 hours. Maybe even less than that if you're just like beelining it from place to place. But anyway, this isn't a problem for me per se. The story length doesn't bother me. Nothing bugs me more than padding in games. Silent Hill's story is just as long as it needs to be, no more, no less. The only reason I bring up the short playtime is because I do know it can be an issue for some people, so I just figured I'd bring it up. Aside from that, nothing really leaps out as bad to me or in need of fixing. Everything is good, and hey, let's be honest here, I'm not really smart enough to give any deep insights into this game. I can't really do a deep dive into each and every single hidden item and monster and how it relates to the broader picture. I'm just a simple-minded gamer, and all you really need to know is the story is good and it flows well. It gives you all you need to know for the current moment, and when all is said and done, you still have a pretty good grasp on what befell Silent Hill and the people within it. And that is all a story needs to do. A beginning, middle, and end, and make sense. And yes, sure, I missed a bunch of context notes and clues that do give deeper insight into the game on my first playthrough many years ago, but I still ended up having a decent grasp on everything. For a quick example, when I first played this game and when I beat it, I really had no idea what Lisa's role in the story was, or anything. I didn't know she was dead. I actually thought Harry killed her accidentally when he pushed her away. I don't know, that's what I thought would happen. And I genuinely had no idea about the unknown liquid and why Harry takes it, or any of the clues that would give you the hint on how to use it later. Yeah, let's just chalk all of that stuff that I missed up on to me just being dumb. It's not the game's fault that I'm stupid. So, anyway, the story is good. I don't have any problems with it. Let's move over onto the gameplay and chat about that instead, shall we? Silent Hill, I must admit, has an interesting control feel. I wouldn't say that it's tank controls exactly, but at the same time it is tank controls. Like, it is definitely a tank control game, but I know that sounds wild and absurd, and it is, don't misunderstand me, but coming right off the heels of Redguard, I don't know, I found this game controlling better than that game. So, yes, Silent Hill does fall under tank controls, but it's really smoother than other games that I've played. Either that, or I've just lost the plot entirely and become one with the code, and now I love tank controls and can do them really well. Well, I don't know. Oh, Lord help me. Oh, anyway, Harry's movement controls are pretty straightforward. He controls via the D-pad on the controller. Up is up, down is down. And to move diagonally, you press two buttons at the same time, like left and up, for example. Camera-wise, you're locked into a fixed perspective. I mean, you are able to control the camera with L2, but it doesn't really give you full control, but it gives you some control over the game's camera. If you press L2, the camera will swing to see whatever Harry's facing, and if you continue to press the button and then press the D-pad at the same time, the camera will follow whatever input direction you're giving it, as Harry will move around. A quick tap of it will reset the camera angle. Now, I say that you don't have full control because you don't really. There are some moments in the game the camera will lock for the sake of immersion. For example, at the very start of the game, when going down the alleyway, the camera is at a fixed perspective. Now, I never really found the camera overly helpful, especially within the tight confinements of a building, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I really had to get used to holding down the L2 button or something like that, because there were plenty of times when I'd like exit a room only to have a monster instantly jump out at me because I couldn't see which direction it was coming from quick enough because the camera just wouldn't whip around, or I don't know, maybe I just needed help with L2. I don't know. Heck, maybe that was the point. Like I said a moment ago, maybe you're just, I don't know, maybe it was meant to be a jump scare. I don't know. But speaking of holding down buttons and so on, the square button is the run button, and for like 80-90% of the game, you'll probably be holding this button down. Hold on. Can you hear that? It's becoming clearer now. It's the furious typing of Silent Hill 1 fans. No, look, listen. Before you finish typing out that comment you're writing, hold on 1 second. and let me finish my thought, okay? Where was I? For most of your playtime, you'll be holding down the square button to have Harry run, because if you don't, he just kind of strolls along and, you know, takes his time. He's in no real hurry. He's in no... You know what? I'm leaving that. I'm leaving that. He's in no real hurry. Cheryl can wait. Now, this can be changed in the options menu, just not the one that the game gives you. You need to input a secret code to unlock a secret menu, and within this secret menu, you get deeper control over the game, such as changing the color of blood, auto-locking onto enemies or not, and toggling the auto run on or off, among other things, of course. All the people I know do turn this feature on. They turn the auto run feature always on. Now, call me crazy, tell me I'm not a meta gamer, which I'm not, say whatever you like, it's not really going to change how I play this game. I personally like to have it turned off. I like to be able to hold the square button. I don't know why, I guess I just like to stop and smell the roses, or in this case, the rust and decay, but still, this is a choice for those who want it, and most players actually do turn this feature on, and personally, I do concur with them. Do turn this feature on, because it's going to save your thumb a little bit of pain. Aside from that, there are a few other controls, like the interact button and backstepping, which I could never get to work reliably. But yeah, you get the idea. Controls are controls, they're always the same, nothing overly strange here. But when it comes to the weapon controls and weapons in general, I'm going to actually lump these in here with the control segment rather than splitting them up. So yeah, exploring Silent Hill isn't for the faint of heart. Harry will need to defend himself against the vast horrors that he comes across, and he's going to do that with the help of weapons, both melee and ranged. Let's discuss melee first. Sometimes you just gotta go toe-to-toe with some unspeakable horror and show it who the real threat of Silent Hill is. Harry can thankfully do that with the help of various weapons that deal various amounts of damage, such as a knife, pipe, hammer, or axe. Whichever weapon you pick, you're going to need to get ready with it by pressing R2, and then you swing away with the X button. And once your foe is down on the ground, it sadly doesn't mean that they're out. Harry, in most cases, will need to finish the job by either stomping them or hitting them again with the weapon or shooting them with a gun. So yeah, keep that in mind. Now, the big downside to getting up close and personal is, well, you're up close and personal. This means that Harry is very liable to get his own butt kicked. He isn't an action hero, and he can't take a ton of damage before dying, not even on the easy mode. So you had better be ready to take a few hits if you're using melee weapons. Now, this can be avoided, of course, but you need to take a step back. Like I said earlier, there's a feature of like a step back move that Harry can do to like gain a little bit of distance. I couldn't get it to trigger all the time, and I figure it probably had something to do with input lag. I was using a PS2 controller via a converter that turned it into a USB. I thought that this would, I don't know, I couldn't find a PS1 controller, so I thought that this would make the best experience, like the most authentic, even though I'm emulating it. But it honestly ended up being a terrible mistake. Like, it was so bad, the control, that I actually had to switch over to my Xbox controller, and for some reason, that worked flawlessly. So, I don't know. I guess that's kind of funny, playing a PlayStation 1 game with an Xbox controller, and somehow it worked perfectly. I'd take from that what you will. Like the true professional I am, after I switched over, I never bothered to check to see if the backstep would work in every case that I would try to trigger it, because I had honestly just switched over to guns at this point and never went back to melee. So, but speaking of guns, we should probably talk about those next. Much like the melee weapons, you've got plenty of choices for guns, from the standard handgun to a shotgun and even a long-range rifle, and again, they deal various amounts of damage and have their own drawbacks. These weapons are used pretty much the same way as a melee weapon. You have to ready it up first with the R2 button and then fire away. And in most cases, Harry will take care of the aiming for you. Mostly. Sometimes it doesn't work. I don't know why. Like, even if he's aimed at them, the bullet will completely miss. Or sometimes the bullet just won't register on an enemy even though they're close to you. Maybe this was done to, you know, reinforce the idea that Harry isn't good with guns. I don't know. Or maybe it's just the game in general and people think it's Harry being bad with guns. I don't know. It's just sometimes I noticed it wouldn't quite work. So yeah, I thought I'd bring that up regardless. Now, the only downside with a gun is you need ammo to make it work, and ammo is finite. It's not infinite. I, however, never found myself running out of bullets, but I did run past a lot of enemies in the early game, so maybe that had something to do with it. I used the handgun for most of the game, and I still had like a ton of bullets for it. And even the shotgun and the rifle, which I barely used the rifle. I think I only used the rifle for the last boss fight, and another boss fight which I didn't talk about. But I still found plenty of bullets for all my guns. And I guess while I'm on the topic of enemies and bullets, I should also bring up the amount of hits that they take is increased or decreased based upon the difficulty setting you choose. But with that, we come to the end of controls and I guess weapons too. So let's move on. Now I'm going to keep this part relatively short because honestly, I don't have that much to say about this topic. But there are puzzles in this game to solve, and they of course range in difficulty, and I didn't bring them up in the story much at all, but rest assured, there are plenty of puzzles here in Silent Hill. Now, how do I feel about these puzzles? Well, I actually like them. There are plenty of clues for you to solve the puzzle, but never enough to just give the answer away. That's something I love about this game. I'm not a fan of puzzles that are just brain dead easy, but I'm also not a fan of puzzles that have nothing but pure moon logic to try to figure them out. Do you know what I mean? Like, adventure games are terrible for this, but sometimes you'll play a game and they just give you the puzzle and then no context or clues. You're just seeing the puzzle and you're kind of like, okay, you know, like how do I solve it? Can I have a little hint here, you know? But Silent Hill doesn't do that. It gives you what you need for the puzzle. Now, I never really felt like these particular puzzles ever outstayed their welcome, but I did find myself rolling my eyes in the final few hours of the game, when it pretty much turns into just a non-stop buy one get three free puzzle bonanza sale. I don't know, it's just that final hospital run is just puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. I won't really give anything away, but let's just say to solve a puzzle, you need a key. To get the key, you need another key. And to get that key, you need to solve another puzzle and or get another item to solve the puzzle. So you're going to be doing a lot of running around in that final mission. And the worst part is that the final mission area, that hospital, is a maze. It will teleport you around and doesn't make sense. So you kind of have to like create a map in your own head. But yeah, it never becomes annoying. It just made me roll my eyes, but I just never became frustrated. So yeah, these puzzles do have a lot of thought put into them, and that's something I can appreciate. It's refreshing when a game puts a unique puzzle in, and not just like the standard puzzles that you always find, like that stupid sliding puzzle. You know the one I'm talking about, where it's like a bunch of tiles and a blank one and you need to like slide them all around to create the picture? I hate that puzzle. I suck at it and I hate it, and it makes me angry every time I see them. There you go, put that one on the wiki page. Like and hate sliding tile puzzles. But anyway, None of the puzzles in Silent Hill are brain dead like that one. They're not bog standard, they are unique. And with that said, that's it. That's all I really need to say about the puzzles. None of them made me angry, and I only had to look up a walkthrough to one of them, but that was just because I was dumb. It wasn't the puzzle's fault. I was just dumb and doing the puzzle backwards and lighting up the wrong thing. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm doing this right. Then I had to go and check a walkthrough, and then as soon as I saw it, I like did a face palm, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just dumb. So anyway, let's move on to music, shall we? To talk about Silent Hill without bringing up the music is an actual crime, punishable by up to 3 years in a maximum security penitentiary. And that is if you're good, because if you're not good, then you'll be spending the time in solitary confinement. And personally, I don't want any of that stuff to happen to me, so I'm not here to break the law. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the music. It's good. Now let's move on to my final thoughts. I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding. Nobody ever falls for that kind of joke. I do have more to say about the music, so let's actually move on to music. Silent Hill's music is one of the few times in my life that I actually wish I understood music better. It isn't anything like I've ever heard in a game before. Heck, it's not something I've ever really heard in any media before. Akira Yamaoka, I hope I pronounced that right, probably didn't, is, for lack of a better term, a musical genius. He didn't just compose the standard horror soundtrack, but rather uses the music to build upon the player's feeling of unease. There are plenty of times you'll be walking through this game and you'll be unsure if the sound you're hearing is an actual monster creeping up on you, or the music itself just, psyching you out. Sometimes I feel like the music in this world would be trying to simulate the sound of how a rapid beating heart should be, or if you were to give sound to the confusion in your mind, or Harry's mind, that's what the music is trying to replicate. And it even draws upon the simple sound of emptiness. It's almost like he recorded an empty studio sometimes, and then just came back the next day and then amplified the music, or lack thereof, to create, I guess, a sort of white noise. If you have ever heard the sound of space, or the sound of a planet in space, you might know what I'm trying to convey here. It really is hard to put into words, but somehow he's able to replicate the sound of silence, I guess. I don't know, it's just one of those rare times when a soundtrack stands out, but in a great way. Sometimes the music you're hearing actually isn't an instrument. It's the sound of metal scraping, or like I said, the sound of silence. It's almost like industrial machines whirring away, and somehow he's able to take these, I guess what you would use as sound effects, like sound foley, like the recording of someone walking on gravel or something like that. He's able to take stuff like that shouldn't work as music, but turns it into it, and it's just, I don't know, it's amazing. The music he creates is oddly pleasing, but also terrible, if that makes sense. It's really, really hard to state how fantastic of a composer Akira Yamaoka is, and again, this is just, it's just one of those times that I really wish I had the words to express myself and how amazing the music is. I wish I understood musical theory, is what I'm trying to say here. It's unconventional, strange, and beautiful all at the same time, and it works when it shouldn't, and it does add to the terror that you should be feeling, or reinforces moments of brief levity. I really am a fan of the Silent Hill soundtrack, and I really do urge those of you who haven't heard it to go out and give it a listen. Sit in a dark room and just put that music on. Some of my personal favorite songs in this game are currently on the screen right now, and as always, I do wish that I could give you a sample of these songs, but YouTube is the way it is, and I'm pretty sure that Akira Yamaoka himself wouldn't mind if I shared with you like 20 seconds of his songs, but yeah, I am personally sorry that I can't do it. It is playing in the background, but I always try to keep it low as like a white noise. But anyway, I think I've embarrassed myself long enough with my lack of musical theory and knowledge on music, so let's just wrap this up, wind it down, and move on over to my final thoughts for Silent Hill 1. Silent Hill might be getting on in years these days, but gosh, does it still pack a punch. There's enough horror here to spook or unnerve the young and old alike. I was probably 20-something when I first played this game, and it gave me chills, and I'd already worked my way through the franchise just backwards. I really like Silent Hill, and I don't believe it has aged all that terribly in the grand scheme of things. The only thing that has aged like sour milk is the damn price for a physical copy of this game. Good lord, I actually think buying the game's weight in gold would be cheaper. I remember, in fact, a few years back, I say a few years, it was probably like 9 or 10 years at this point, but I remember walking into this small like gaming store, this local gaming store that I was near, and seeing a copy of it for $40, and I thought to myself, nah, that's a bit too rich for my blood, so I passed it up, and not a single day goes by where I don't regret that moment. I don't think I'll ever live it down. If I did, however, have to level some small amount of criticism towards the game, it would be two things, and believe me, I know hearing this is gonna send a few Silent Hill fans into a mad frenzy, but hear me out before you sacrifice me to Samael, okay? The voice acting for some of the characters isn't the greatest. It's good, now don't get me wrong, but it is a little stilted and gives me personal vibes of like early anime dub, if you know what I mean. Most of it is coming from Harry himself, and yeah, I know, how could I suck, I'm not a fan, I genuinely have heard this before. And I know how it all sounds, but sometimes it can be stilted. And I know a lot of people actually like it because it adds to the uncanny valley type feeling that the game has, but I don't think that that's what the game developers were going for. I genuinely don't believe that. I think that's just the direction the voice actors were given, and maybe some inexperience on their behalf. But I don't know. I could be wrong. But again, it is fine. Really, it is. And I don't hate it. Some of it's just not the best, okay? I still wanted to bring this all up regardless. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the draw distance. Now, I know why it is the way it is. It was the lack of power on the PlayStation, and they couldn't render things far enough away, and they had to make up for that with the heavy fog or the darkness to cover up the rendering, and because of that, it added to the creepiness of the game. I think there's a word people use for that. It's like restrictions breed creativity or something like that. Regardless, it helped the game in a positive way. This is good, and I do love the choice, you know, without a shadow of a doubt. That said, however, I do wish I could see where I was going just a little bit better, especially in the nightmare world towards the end. Sometimes I just felt like I was running around like a headless chicken and like hugging the walls looking for the way forward, while a wild amount of enemies were just trying to eat my face off. And again, I hear you, I do, and I do agree with you that it is, you know, it's there to add a level of fear, you know, fear of the unknown. Who knows what you might bump into while you're frantically running around and all of that. And I do agree. I do like it, and I do understand, and I do know that it is part of the limitation, but I do wish that I could see just a little bit further. That's all. Just a tiny smidge further. Oh, actually, you know what? Now that I've been thinking about it, there is like one more thing I wanted to bring up. Sometimes the readable notes, they blend in a little too well with the background. So much so that you'd be forgiven for thinking that there's nothing there. I kind of wish that they stood out a little bit more, like the health drinks and the ammo do. I think they feel a little bit more highlighted. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I kind of wish it was highlighted a little clearer. And maybe that is just the fault of the emulator, or maybe it isn't. I never did play this game on the original PlayStation, just the emulated version of it here and now, and back on the PS3 and Vita, which is emulation. It isn't running on original hardware. That is still emulation. So those are the only negative things I really have to say about the game, and I don't even really have any issues like bugs or anything else like that to bring up, so that's good. That's great. It's fantastic. I honestly wouldn't change a single thing about this game. It is remembered for a reason. Silent Hill is special to me, and I've never played anything like it before or since, excluding the other games in the franchise, of course. It does invoke a horror that I don't believe has ever really been seen or matched since. A lot of people have tried to emulate, but I do believe a lot of people have failed. And it's no fault of theirs, you know? In this game, you just never know if a monster is waiting for you around the next corner or in a room, and it's only thanks to the fantastic addition of the radio playing static that you actually get a warning whatsoever. And the music it just adds to the tension, and the monster designs are just, they're second to none. And I agree, the game doesn't even rely on heavy horror tropes, you know? It's a little bit subversive in that nature, you know? You do get the odd jump scare here and there, and I guess that's to be expected, but that isn't what the game is. The game isn't relying on that. It's relying on its own atmosphere and your imagination to really create the fear. The fear of the unknown. What's around the next corner? What's in that next room? Should I fight or should I run? Should I use the shotgun and end this fight quicker, or save the shells for something that could come later? Will I even survive until then? I am a true sucker for a great horror game like Silent Hill, and I feel no shame in admitting that. I also love wondering what this game would be like in a real situation. Like, could you imagine this? Like, I mean, I don't have a child, but I couldn't even begin to understand the absolute dread involved in having a child go missing. But that core idea can be applied to any family member. I mean, could you imagine this actually happening to you and somebody close to you? Do you think you actually have what it takes to save someone you love? There are only so many ways I can tell you that I enjoy this game, and that I love what it does and love the fear it brings. So, let me just skip to the chase and answer, should you play it? And the answer is obvious. It should be. It's absolutely hell no, G.I. Joe. Hell no, G.I. Joe, you shouldn't be playing this game. No, I'm kidding. You should. It's absolutely, you should play this game. No shadow of a doubt. Not a shadow of a doubt. Play Silent Hill in any personal way you can, which sadly brings me over to my next point, which is that I'd love to point you in some sort of direction on where to grab yourself a copy, but I honestly have no idea. I did own a digital copy of this game on the PlayStation 3, and in turn the PlayStation Vita, but I honestly don't even know if they sell that anymore. I don't even know if the PlayStation 3 store is even up. If it is, you could grab it there. I'm pretty sure I picked it up for like $6 or something like that, USD, I think. So not much, but I mean, outside of that digitally, I have no clue. I have no clue. I genuinely don't. You could grab yourself the real physical copy, but I mean, I love this game, man, but even I personally struggle to recommend it for buying it at some of those prices. I mean, and you'd have to have something to play it on, so... I mean, I have no idea how much a PlayStation 1 goes for these days, but... Yeah, I mean, I really wish Konami would just do some sort of remaster or re-release like they have been doing for Metal Gear Solid, Castlevania, and Contra. Oh, and that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collection thing that they have. But the last time Konami did this, that wasn't a love letter to Silent Hill or its fans. That was like a direct sucker punch to any fan of Silent Hill. Seriously, the less said about the Silent Hill HD collection, the better. Seriously, that was an absolute insult, and I have never, ever gotten over how bad that game was. Like, that was an absolute gigantic waste of money. I mean, honestly, I know the story behind it. It doesn't surprise me they didn't have the code, blah, 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 blah. But still, I do wish that Konami would invest a little bit and try to do something special for Silent Hill, like those collections that they've been putting out. I really, 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 really do believe that it would go a long way to showing Silent Hill fans how much you appreciate them, and it would genuinely bring Silent Hill into a newer generation. I do think a lot of people would check this out, play it, and fall in love. But I guess that's kind of what they're trying to do with Silent Hill 2's remake, which, as of the recording of this, came out a few weeks ago. And that's it, pals. That is all I have to say about this PlayStation 1 horror classic. If you'd like to leave now, that's perfectly fine, because I'm just going to do the What's Next section and the member shoutouts for the channel. So if you'd like to just skip all that and leave, then you're more than welcome to. Thank you very much for staying this long, and I really do appreciate it. So what is next? What's next after this? Well, the Silent Hill train hasn't stopped a-chugging. Up next is Silent Hill 2 for the PlayStation 2, which was also emulated, sadly, sorry. I do what I have to do. That's up next. It's not going to make it in October, which sucks, but that's okay. It'll be out in November as soon as I can. Like, literally, as soon as I finish doing this video and uploading it, I will be working on the script. And then after that, I put out a poll asking if you would like to see my thoughts on the Silent Hill 2 remake. So it was practically unanimous that you did, so that's what I'm doing. I have already bought it, I have already started playing it, and my thoughts on it will have to wait until the video, which will come out a few days after the Silent Hill 2 video, not the remake. Yeah, you know what I mean. And then after that will be a video celebrating not only 2,000 subscribers, which, by the way, thank you very much, but also my 2nd year anniversary here on the platform, which is mind-boggling. So yeah, it'll be a Q&A video, and I'll just be playing a bad game in the background. Hopefully it'll make for a interesting video? I have no idea. Probably won't. But there you go. If you want to see a bad video game or you want to join in on the Q&A, then you're more than welcome to. But once I get a little bit closer, I'll be asking for questions. But anyway, that's it. That's all that's coming up next. Oh, and then The Witcher after that. But yeah, and I will get around to it. I swear, I've already cleared my schedule. Everything's all good. So anyway, members, I'd like to give you a wonderful shout out. It's always appreciated the lengths you go to support me. So thank you very much to the following Venzo people. Family Dog, who's been around since the very, very beginning and my first channel subscriber. So thank you very much, Family Dog. David Welch, TJ and Jack, Aaron Nelson, Amelia, Adam Myers, Miami Fred, The Rog, oh, it's changed. Thierry's changed the username. Hold on a second. I'm doing this live. I try to do it live all the time. Thierry, Words of a King, 7 times Purified, Rana. Okay, there you go, Thierry. Joe Enderman, who's the Mad Lad gifted sub. Crazy person. So thank you, Joe. Anya the Khajiit, Kaz Pro, who I didn't get to shout out. No, I did. I live shout out. But I didn't get to say your name in a video because there were so many names to get through. So, Kaz, welcome in. And finally, the Elder Irish. So thank you to each and every one of you. Your support is... it is beyond measure. I can't really ever thank you truly for it. So thank you very, 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 very much. And that is it, my friends. I'm gonna go get started on the Silent Hill 2 video. I hope you've appreciated this one. And until then, as always, peace out, pals.